You're live whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. All right, Council, at 6:45, I will call the special council meeting to order. And I will start off with our land acknowledgement. Today, we acknowledge that Collingwood is located on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, including the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Ojibwe peoples, and on lands connected with the Lake Simcoe Nottawasaga Treaty of 1818. This is the home of a diverse range of Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors to our society. I will now look for the motion to adopt the agenda, and the motion reads that the content of the special council agenda for March 1st, 2021 be adopted as amended. And the addition is a consent agenda item 5.1.1, downtown Collingwood BIA re-gray zone lockdown status. Can I get a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor McLeod, seconded by Councillor Madigan. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations, Council? Council Bourbon.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. Yeah, just to reiterate what I did in SIC, my daughter works for the Collingwood Y and lost her job when we went gray and gets back when we go red. So I'll remove myself. I'd ask through you to Clerk Almus, then with that, the addition of the BIA one, is it the same thing? If I'm leaving for one, should I leave for both? Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you, Councillor Berman. Any other declarations, Council? Seeing none, if you find yourself in that position, let us know. Item 4.1, other business. Discussion re Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit decision to move back into lockdown. And I do have a motion that was circulated ahead of the meeting. So first thing we need to do is get a motion to waive notice. We did discuss this at the SIC, but it doesn't entitle us to move forward this quickly. So I need a motion to move, and I've got Councillor McLeod and Councillor Hamlin. Thank you. And so I will call for the vote then. All in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. And so this brings us then to the motion that was circulated, and I will read into the record, and I'll look for a mover and a seconder, and we can start discussion. Whereas the town of Collingwood recognizes that COVID is a threat and that it must be managed transparently and effectively to achieve the public's support and compliance and protect people. And whereas the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit has recommended that Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit area re-enter the gray lockdown zone COVID-19 protocols effective March 1st, 2021, which was supported by the province of Ontario. And whereas the town of Collingwood is along the westerly border of the health unit area, which abuts the Grey Bruce Health Unit designated green prevent zone. And whereas there have been 2 resolutions from Collingwood Council asking the province to address interregional travel, and there is non-mandatory provincial and health agencies messaging that travel is not recommended, yet there are many vehicles from outside the region in Collingwood demonstrating a significant level of non-compliance. And whereas many of our businesses have undertaken great financial and operational efforts to ensure the protection and safety of their staff and patrons, and who may further choose to operate at a higher restriction based on their comfort and the business or service they provide. And whereas local businesses have worked intensely to support each other and the town through the COVID pandemic, however, local businesses are now communicating that many cannot last through another closure. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Collingwood hereby authorize the following. 1, the Council support the concerns of the Collingwood Downtown Business Improvement Area Board of Management and all businesses within the town of Collingwood that have been detrimentally impacted by the COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. And 2, the Council asks the Premier to publicly explain immediately what factors would move our abutting municipality to the west into the least restrictive green prevent zone as Collingwood was moved into the gray lockdown zone, and how these assessments together decrease COVID risks. And that the Mayor, 3, that the Mayor send a letter to the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit Chief Medical Officer of Health, Premier of Ontario, and Minister of Health and Long-Term Care, requesting that the town of Collingwood be immediately reinstated to the red control zone and that the mayor work collaboratively with our neighboring municipalities and the county of Simcoe to seek their support and further advocacy efforts in this regard. And that 5, that council initiate an immediate letter writing campaign to encourage local businesses and residents to speak up and petition the health unit and province regarding their concerns with the COVID-19 restrictions. And 6, that should the gray lockdown zone not be removed within 1 week, that the Economic Support and Recovery Task Force be reinstated to further explore options that could be considered by council to support our residents and business community. And 7, the council continue to advocate for additional provincial and federal financial supports for Collingwood's businesses, as well as continuing our Shop Local campaigns. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Jeffrey and the Deputy Mayor. So we now have the motion on the floor. Questions or comments, Council? Councillor Madigan.
Thank you very much, Mayor Saunderson. I like the direction that we're taking with this, but I would advocate that we take a more aggressive approach. I don't believe this is a municipal thing. I think it's more of a regional thing. And for us to be lumped still away with Barrie, but again, 6 kilometers away, be green, I think we should be looking at asking to be in the green status. It's been widely known over 50 years that Blue Mountain and Collingwood are one and the same, to the detriment of the people in the town of the Blue Mountains and to the benefit of the people in Collingwood. But I have a feeling that this will have an adverse effect this time. And I would like to see the businesses in Collingwood succeed as much as the businesses in Blue Mountain are, if this is the case. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go around the table and then I'll come back asking for potential amendments. Councillor Doherty.
Thank you, Worship. I'm generally in agreement with this motion. I do have some concern about the statement that goes, and whereas there has been 2 resolutions from Collingwood Council asking the province to address interregional travel and references non-compliance, etc. To me, I feel that's talking out of both sides of our mouths, because on the one hand, we are asking the Chief Medical Officer of Health and the province to move our region back into a condition or a state whereby we can have visitors coming to our community to support our businesses. And in the next breath, we're saying that we have been asking the province and the Chief Medical Officer of Health to discourage travel into our region. So I'm just a bit confused by that. And I just wonder if that message might be confused by others.
Well, thank you for those comments. I will look to Councillor Jeffrey, the mover, but my understanding is this council has passed 2 resolutions asking the province to look at that. And I think one of the frustrations I'm hearing from our community is that while we've been put into a gray lockdown, we continue to see travelers coming from other gray zones. So I will look to Councillor Jeffrey.
If I could just
Sure.
explain, Your Worship, I realize that we have passed 2 resolutions to that effect. I'm just saying I don't see how referencing those 2 resolutions adds any strength to this motion.
I think we're just trying to indicate that we in our community have been doing everything we can to make sure that we're keeping our COVID infections down, and feel that this is somewhat punitive, the recent actions. But Councillor Jeffrey, do you want to speak to that?
I agree with your comments, Mayor Saunderson. I think what we show by that is we're not open at all cost. What we recognize is that we need to be enforced within the zones that we are, and having great lockdown zones come in, we're jeopardizing our businesses. So I'm okay with it there.
Okay, well, Councillor Doherty, if you wish to make a motion as we get farther down, then I'll come back to you on that.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions or comments, Council, on the motion as Councillor Hamlin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was hoping that maybe we could make a reference to the fact it's actually the town of Blue Mountains that's on our westerly border, and that our economies are entwined. And with our residents, visitors, tourists, and travelers traveling, or employees traveling back and forth daily between the two towns, that we, this is, I guess, open for discussion, but I'd say we should be in the same lockdown zone. Because otherwise, to me, it doesn't make sense. So if they're in green, we should be in green. That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments? I've got Councillor Comey and then the Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I want to echo what I've heard around the table with respect to, I think the zones should match. I'm somewhat concerned about us getting a little out of our lane when it comes to addressing, direct data to support it. I don't think we should be winging zones around, but I would say if our whole point is that common sense suggests that because we're essentially intertwined, that they should mirror one another, then based on that logic, I am also in support of this motion asking we mirror Blue Mountains and go into the green. I'd like to echo Councillor Doherty's concern, and I know we're bringing up voting records tonight. I didn't vote in favor of any motions related to inter-regional travel at the time because I had concerns about how we address that type of messaging and how much our local businesses do depend on those from out of town. So I'm also not comfortable with this. You can maybe walk your way out of it by saying at the time there was concern about it, but I don't see that spirit having a place in this motion. Now we're saying if council agrees, we'd like to go into the green. We'd like to welcome people back. And if anything, our businesses are willing to go the distance and continue to demonstrate a willingness for compliance. I am absolutely, please, not a fan to the motion creators where we get into based on looking at vehicles. And I've been very consistent in that messaging. I don't like the idea that we're saying that there's an otherism. We can tell by the type of car you drive or your little license plate information where you're from. I'm not a fan of that as a community. I could go on quite some length about that. So at a minimum, I'd request some changes to the verbiage related to based on the look of vehicles. There's non-compliance. But overall, I'd like that wording removed altogether. I agree with Councillor Doherty. I think it's two messages in the same motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I just would like to make, I guess, maybe two comments, and I'm glad that we're going to have this discussion and hopefully come to something that we can all agree on unanimously. I don't disagree in terms of the comments that have been made specific to, well, actually, I'm going to come to that in a second. I'd like to address the color first. In no way, shape, or form this afternoon did I suggest that we as a council advocate for green. In fact, I actually said if I was a councillor in the Blue Mountains, I'd be quite concerned as to the rationale as to why all of a sudden that particular area has just been opened wide open. And for all of the good work that they have done to ensure that their numbers have been low, as has ours, they do run the risk of potentially having members of their community exposed to COVID, or people coming to enjoy the area who then are exposed, or vice versa, bringing it to and from. So I think there's a very different conversation on the other side of the county line in terms of the rationale, and that speaks to the point too, where I think the province needs to let us know what was the rationale that you would literally side by side impose gray on one and green on the other. What I'd like to see is that we just focus on Collingwood and say, look, the gray, although, as I said earlier today, it was not a surprise that Dr. Gardner, because he's advocated for a lockdown, he advocated this prior to the end of the province-wide lockdown, to staying for having his health unit or the health unit stay within a lockdown. So it's not necessarily a surprise that he has advocated for this and that the province has now done a reversal. There, in my humble opinion, I don't have the numbers, I don't have the expertise, I don't have the background to make the suggestion that our numbers in any way, shape, or form, quite frankly, belong anywhere below maybe the red. What I was saying today, and in the conversations I've been having with people, is that when you look at what's allowed in the gray and what was allowed in the red, there is significant impact to those businesses that are catering to the local community. The example that I went on about this afternoon was the hairstylist or hair industry. They are not catering to those who are coming to the community. Generally speaking, their clientele are from within the region. The same would be true for the gyms. I think of somebody, for example, like Sarah Applegarth, who is a community leader, who has run her business successfully for years, who has spent time and money and energy to ensure that her clientele, herself, her staff are looked after in the best way possible, are now closed once again. Ed and Tara Hunt, who own Anytime Fitness Club over on the east side of town, same thing. And there are numerous examples. And of course, we've got the one right downtown as another example. All of our restaurants, the mayor and I were just chatting earlier. I can't imagine having a line of credit with Cisco and having to sit there and go, what do I order? I haven't been given any definitive timeline from the province as to how long this will last. Last week they were starting to finally reopen with some success, and boom, all of a sudden, they've been shut down. And I don't know the industry well, but you don't order your product overnight. I mean, there is some lag time, and I think that they've been punitively damaged as a result. And yet, they have demonstrated that throughout this pandemic, when asked, they have stepped up and they have ensured, again, that they themselves as operators, that their staff, that their clientele, for the most part, are looked after responsibly. And the numbers bear that out. But I don't think that we should be saying, well, Town of Blue Mountains is in green, therefore we should be in green. I think the onus is on the province to say, how the hell did you come up with that conclusion? You tell us, and you tell all the members of Collingwood in the region and the Blue Mountains of the region, because obviously somebody came to that conclusion, or a group of people came to that conclusion, and maybe there is logic behind it. Tell us what it is. So I think that is the second point to this. With regards to the vehicles, and I'll be honest, I can't remember what I've said and haven't said. I do know what I voted for, but we as a community have got to get past this whole, who's been here for 5 generations and who's been here for 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. And the reality is, if I was to pick any subdivision and I went door to door and I looked at the dealer plate on the vehicle, well, quite frankly, if you're driving a BMW, there isn't a BMW dealership in this community. If you're driving, a higher end vehicle of one of the other brands, they aren't local either. But that doesn't mean that the resident automatically is from Toronto or Barrie from BMW, Georgian BMW or whatever. I'm free to buy and purchase any product from any place that I want to, whether that's here locally, whether that's online, whether it's from some other area. And this whole notion of identifying people by dealer plate is just flat out wrong. And I hope, quite frankly, and you know, I use this as a kind of a personal example, but I was born in 71, and I think my parents moved to Waterloo in 69. So they've been there for 52 years, give or take. Up until I think the last 4 years, they've always bought vehicles from particular dealerships. Recently, for whatever reason, my father happened to buy a vehicle from a dealership outside of the Waterloo region. I would hate to think that somebody who has lived in that community for that long is now looked upon differently because they happen to be they drive a vehicle that has a dealer plate. And it really frustrates me because it's a conversation that's there. It's an undertone in the conversation. You hear it, whether it's online, whether it's in line at the grocery store. Those people, Torontonians, etc. And quite frankly, it's bullshit, and it has to stop. And again, it doesn't matter if you're 5 generations or you're 5 minutes. You're a member of the community, and quite frankly, it doesn't. And or if you're a tourist. The reality is that the Prime Minister didn't put travel restrictions in. So if somebody legally wants to travel, they have that right. I don't agree with it, but that's the reality. And until something is definitively changed in terms of the travel restrictions, we can encourage and say, look, you know what, stay in place or go from destination A to A, but don't be going from A to B to Z to J, that type of thing. But to have these types of conversations where we're talking about, the type of vehicle or where a dealer plate is from, it really starts to eat at the fabric of the community. Because quite frankly, again, whether you're here, 5 years or 5 generations, many people bring many assets and many qualities to the community, and quite frankly, we're all in this together. It's all of us that have gotten us to this point. It's unfortunate that probably in the last month we're starting to see the chinks in the armor, and we're starting to see the breakdowns. And it's unfortunate that this specific move has, I really think, created chasms from an economic, from a mental health perspective, from a social perspective. And I really just think that we need to focus on that. The Premier needs to explain the green versus gray. We can't control that. But what we can control is the fact that the hairstylist has been closed for 6 months on and off and is catering to a local consumer. And that is grossly unfair. And by simply stating to the province, please give them a chance by moving us back to the red, at the very least the red, we've done our job. And then we can look at items 5 through 7 in terms of the second step. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Well impassioned. I will caution you just on your language a bit going forward. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So I guess realizing that we don't get to pick the color, and as the Deputy Mayor said, our focus here is to get some kind of explanation as to why such an absurd decision would be made side by side on economically connected communities, that if we simply did the wording to red, or I don't know if you could say less with colors, how you would word that within the spectrum. But I think that we need to, as aggressive as we want to be, we also need to set ourselves up for success. And I just think if we could somehow say, take us back to red or under. I don't know how to describe the colors that are under in that spectrum.
I think you could say red designation or lower.
Yes.
Something to that effect. Yeah, I agree. I think we want to be very succinct and hard hitting in terms of what we're asking the province to do and the health unit in terms of items 1, 2, And then the letters will reflect that, which are 3 and 4, or 3 anyway. Are there other general comments or questions before we start to get into the wordsmithing? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our Deputy Mayor. You know, I agree with mostly what you're saying, but would you have no comments then about the fact that our economies are so intertwined and our businesses are suffering because of the differences in the control zones?
Deputy Mayor.
Sure. First, I don't tend to listen to myself, so I apologize if I used inappropriate language. So I 100% agree. Our economies are intertwined. It's unfortunate that one of the things that I think probably, you know, in a university course years from now, we'll look at is the geopolitical failures of this pandemic, and the fact that our regional health units are the defined boundaries that they have today aren't set up properly, that our economic boundaries aren't set up properly, that they're constrained by these artificial lines that create county lines and municipal lines. So I 100% agree that, you know, if you were to say, look at the ridge of the escarpment and everything that's sort of below and the town of Collingwood, they are intertwined. I have used this in speaking with people for years, and that is that, and Councillor Madigan alluded to it earlier in terms of sort of the you know, capitalizing on the Blue Mountains. And that I firmly believe today, the first 100 people that come in off the train at Union Station, if you simply ask them the question, where is Blue Mountain Resort? 95 out of 100 will tell you it's in Collingwood. And for the town of Collingwood, we have completely monopolized and capitalized on that opportunity that their community is intertwined in that respect. And so I do think, I thought the intent, and I liked what was written in point number 3, is just that, again, I'm not a medical expert. I have no idea what the rationale was behind them being moved to a green and us being moved to the gray, other than the fact that our chief medical officer advocated for us to move to the gray. And I would hope that they would look at that and that they would explain it. But I also don't think that that automatically means that we should be brought into parallel, unless they are literally going to physically say, okay, we're going to start to change the boundaries. You know, and this is a conversation for way down the road, but you know, the health unit, for example, instead of maybe looking at the geography from Collingwood to Innisfil to you know, Bracebridge, we should have areas that are say, okay, well, the health unit should be based on a 50-kilometer radius of the Collingwood General and Marine Hospital, for example, and therefore it does cover geopolitical boundaries. But I mean, that's a whole different conversation.
Yes, thank you for that answer. My comment is, why I raise this is I'm afraid that the answer we're going to get back, if we just say justify, which I'm not opposed to asking, but they may just say, well, the Simcoe Muskoka health unit, you've got a gazillion cases, whatever the number is, and you've got this and you've got that, which we know is all driven by the easterly end of our health unit. And then maybe they're going to say, Ray Bruce, well, they'll have gazillion less, you know, 1,000. So they've got a lot fewer cases than you. We've got a boundary. Well, I would like to come up with some words that talk about, in addition to what's here, given that our closest neighbor is in a different zone, our economies are entwined. You know, we need to be in a more, you know, I'm happy to say red or less, but I just think we need to explain it a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think in the discussion, the SIC, we talked about a level playing field. So I don't necessarily want to be asking them to reconsider their green designation. That's not our business. That's Grey County's, but we're asking them to reconsider our designation. And so isn't the point really that we're asking them to reconsider, get us out of gray and put us into a more appropriate designation where it's a level playing field between our two economies? So if we had something that read immediately reinstated to the red control zone or lower designation to level the playing fields between our jurisdictions, does that make sense? Is that forceful enough? Okay. All right, and there was some discussion about the whereas and the cars license plates. I'm wondering if we just remove that last phrase. So what would be there is, and whereas there are being 2 resolutions from Collingwood Council asking the province to address interregional travel, and there is a non-mandatory provincial and health agencies messaging that travel is not recommended, period. So we're not trying to create 2 levels of citizens in our community. We're just pointing out the fact that we have made the request before, and that both the province and the health agencies have talked about limiting interregional travel. That's just a fact. If people are good with that, I'm seeing some heads nodding. Go ahead, Councillor Doherty.
With apologies if I appear to be obtuse, but I still do not see how this particular statement adds to our motion in any way. I'd like to move to strike it entirely.
Okay, so do you have a seconder for that? Go ahead, Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate you indulging me for 1 sec, because I just want to circulate something back through you to Councillor Doherty. Councillor Doherty would tip my reasoning a little bit with full acknowledgement that I didn't support those motions in the past. It was when the deputy mayor spoke to something that realigned me a bit to this intent, was that he had a very local focus with this particular motion, meaning our gyms, our hair salons, like our very local focused business. So I'm sure we're all the same mindset that we're trying to get to a unanimous, motion or movement on this. So I'm a little more hesitant now, or I'd appreciate the deputy mayor, Councillor Jeffrey, chiming in on this. I am with you on it. I see some inconsistency, but I'm more open to it now based on the deputy mayor's statements about this being, hey, remember, we have so many locally serving businesses closed right now, versus our prior movements about shop local and our restaurants and such. Just wanted to share those thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Doherty.
Yes, and through you to, I guess, to Councillor Comey, and I hear what you're saying, and I also hear what the deputy mayor is saying, but I don't see in this motion clear language to that effect, that the crux of our argument is that we want to keep our local businesses open for our local residents. I'm not seeing that in this motion. And so again, I think that there's, I think it adds nothing. It has potential to cause confusion. And again, I would argue that we lose nothing by striking that statement altogether.
Go ahead, Councillor McLeod.
I'll call the question on the amendment, please.
All right, do we have a seconder?
I'm the seconder.
Okay, so Councillor McLeod is seconded. So we are then calling the question on removing that entire paragraph from the notice of motion. All in favor? Opposed? And I think that is a draw then for all, so that defeats that. So that portion remains, but I guess just get confirmation that we have removed the last sentence talking about the vehicle license plates. So that sentence is out. And so it's a full stop after that travel is not recommended. All right, council, so we've massaged that paragraph. We have changed paragraph 3 to indicate for lower designation to level the playing field between our communities. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Madigan and then Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. And as I was first to speak on this and asked gracefully that we go to green, I'll accept the wording of this. I just want to make sure that you know what, I know we all understand this, and for however many people are watching streaming or through Rogers, I just want the message out there that this council knows that every business is a local. Every business that buys and sells products in Collingwood is local, and it's not just a particular group or set of businesses that do that. So we're all struggling in Collingwood, and I think that this will be a great message to forcefully ask, to be honest, what we should have been asking for a long time ago. So I will support it, even though it doesn't say go to green, and I thank everybody for their comments.
Thank you, Councillor Madigan. Councillor Comey, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'm going to float the idea to my colleagues that we have, as at item number 7, we have that should the gray lockdown zone not be removed with 1 week, that we reestablish the economic task force. But I really feel that from our prior meeting just before this, talking about patios and the number of deputants we had, it's sounding like we need this regardless to come back in the forefront. So I'm wondering, does it really just hinge on that? I mean, if we're just going to squeak it out to red, or even if we got to green, to Councillor Madigan's, everybody's points tonight, everybody's suffering. They need support. So if my colleagues felt the same, I would certainly support the idea of simply saying, fire this back up again.
Just so I'm clear, Councillor Comey, what you'd like is paragraph 7, we're proposing it, just say that the Economic Support and Recovery Task Force be reinstated to explore further options and take the caveat about the 1 week. Is that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, if okay. I can get support for that idea.
All right, well, I'm seeing nodding from the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Jeffrey, who are the mover and seconder. So would you accept that as a friendly amendment? Yeah, okay, so we have done that. We've changed that wording. Thank you, Councillor Combs.
Okay, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, if I may. So we saw that the attempted amendment on the sort of Councillor Doherty's thoughts. I think it might be fair to consider getting across in this motion, and I know these times are always stressful for Clerk Almost, where we put her on her spot, but is it truly clear then? Are we getting across this idea that our gyms remain closed, our hairdressers remain closed? Is there a way to get across somehow some verbiage, and I apologize for not being incredibly helpful, that speaks to that sentiment that this began with the deputy mayor saying that we're unable to support each other locally through these services, that it doesn't get construed as a sort of just a tourism-based request.
Yeah, and maybe if I can make a suggestion, because it's a modified gray zone, and the modifications allowed other businesses to be open, but it particularly disadvantaged hair salons, gyms, and restaurants, I think. So I'm wondering if we can insert wording to that effect when we say that the area re-entered a modified gray lockdown zone protocols effective March 1st, which was supported by the province and particularly prejudiced gyms, hair salons, and restaurants, because I think that's the groups that have been the most impacted by this change.
Your worship, I don't know if this is beneficial.
Okay.
Let me know if it is or not.
Well, I think that is good. Maybe we could say the move to modified gray zone has disproportionate effects on.
Oops. Sorry, gray zone. Sorry, was there further changes there?
No, not for me. So I'll open the floor then to council. Any comments on that wording?
Good.
I think I'm seeing general nodding.
And then I've made this change here, the red zone or less restrictive.
And then we
And
did
then-
want to add in, I think, to or lower or less restrictive designation to level the playing field between our business communities, or because we're trying to link. Okay. Council comments on that? All right. That's very helpful, Sarah. Thank you. Council, any other questions or comments before we look at calling the vote on this? You go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I wanted to go back to Councillor Hamlin's point because I think it's a good one. So in the whereas is the third paragraph down, where it says, which abuts the Grey Bruce Health Unit designated green prevent zone, home to the town of the Blue Mountains, which locally is, known to be economically integrated or something to that. I agree. There should be a reference that the two are economically tied to one another. And I will point out, in fairness, that the clerk had made reference to that, and I requested that it was actually pulled. So thank you for adding it.
I'm wondering, because it makes me a little nervous by calling out the other community. I'm wondering, the RTO 7, which is our regional tourism association district, I think we're RTO 7. We're all about regional aspect, and so it seems to me that we've got this dividing line down between our regional tourism association, which is dividing us. So would we want to point out then that that our regional tourism association, RTO 7, crosses the border, and that a large part of our business, that there is a strong economic tie between communities across the region. I share some of the concerns just about. I don't want them to be seen all of a sudden they go to orange. That's not the intent of this motion. This motion is to make sure that we level the playing field for our community. And so I think maybe if we point out that RTO 7 includes the town of Blue Mountains, that we don't even have to name them, just say it's a large economic driver for our community, and there are strong economic ties both sides of the county line. I'm wondering if that's perhaps a safer way to do that.
May I just interject? Could you just say something to the effect like, which is provincially recognized as the RTO 7 designated tourism area?
Sorry, I just muted myself. The clock's going off. But no, I'm comfortable with that. I agree that we want to emphasize the strong economic ties. But I would rather do it without comparing ourselves, I guess is where I'm going. Go ahead, Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. And I think with Councillor Comey's input, also, we were recognizing that this was about the local businesses and the differences in the modified gray, as opposed to about not making it about tourism.
Right. I guess I was just trying to go to the RTO 7 to highlight the economic. I'm not trying to highlight tourism, but I'm trying to draw the connection there without naming any specific municipalities, I guess, is where I was headed, because I do, I understand absolutely the intent. I want to make sure we're focused on us. Sarah, or you were going to say something?
Just for clarification, am I including the RTO7 now, or am I just putting it back with abuts the Gray Bruce Health Unit designation green prevent zone, which includes the town of the Blue Mountains? Or am I going back to being a little more vague and not being specific? That's the town of Blue Mountains.
Well, aren't we really trying to say that we've got two halves of a large economic engine that are now at the opposite ends of the spectrum? So I guess I'm open to ideas about how you word that. I mean, what we're really trying to say here is that it's an incredible leap to go from green in one area and down to lockdown in another area, when those two areas are part of an economic engine for our region. And so I don't know how people want to phrase that, but that's to me what we're trying to emphasize here.
I'm wondering if it could be added in that line that we added, speaking to the types of businesses. So if I may, through your worship to council, that line says, and whereas the move to modified gray zone has had disproportionate effect on business serving local clientele, such as hairdressers, gyms, and restaurants within our interconnected business community that abuts the town of Blue Mountains, or adjacent to the town of Blue Mountains.
Sorry, could I interject?
Yes, go ahead.
And I apologize if I'm overthinking and maybe even complicating the situation, but I'm actually wondering if we could address what we're looking to address, but do it in point 2 under the therefore be it resolved, where it talks about that the council asked the premier to publicly explain immediately what factors would move our abutting municipality to the west into the least restrictive green zone, green prevent zone, as Collingwood was moved into the gray lockdown zone. As the two abutting municipalities are economically, socially intertwined, and put it in there.
Okay, I'm seeing heads nod. So Sarah, I don't know if you got that wording.
Yeah, can you repeat that for me, please?
No.
No expletives.
It basically was at the end of the gray lockdown zone, that these two abutting municipalities, which are economically, socially intertwined.
Okay. All right. Council, are there any other comments, suggestions? Go ahead, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if we can just have a complete look at this motion one more time before we vote on it.
Sure. Sarah, can you pull it up, please?
All right, so this is what we're adding. And so I need clarification. Were we adding it to this one or to the second paragraph?
Well, I think the deputy mayor wanted to add that paragraph down to paragraph 2 of the action items. So it did go after the gray zone, lockdown gray zone, it would go in there, please.
I'll refix the numbering there.
And the word given should go just before the part that you pasted. I can.
Yeah, right there. Yes.
Sorry. So this one here, your worship, so which is now number 3, or less restrictive to level the playing field within our.
So maybe you could say then, or less restrictive designation to level the playing field between these business communities.
Okay. Just let me know if you want to scroll up or down.
Council, how are we doing? Has everyone had a chance to review it?
Councillor Doherty has her card up.
Okay, okay, go ahead, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just looking at this revision now to item 2, given that, and I'm just not going to read the whole thing, but given that these 2 abutting municipalities are economically and socially intertwined, I don't see now where the rest of that paragraph again adds to the argument and how these assessments together decrease COVID risks. In fact, it strikes me as poking the bear a little bit. You know, we're talking about the economics here, and I think the point of this motion is to address that economics at this point in time, or unless I'm missing something.
Yes, yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I guess you could break out the paragraph that the province explain why the difference and how that decreases the COVID risks, and then the separate paragraph to say that they immediately move us back into out of great lockdown. Well,
We could
yeah.
Can I just suggest that the 2 sentences are in the reverse order?
Yeah, I think maybe you're right.
And it should be comma, and how these assessments together decrease COVID risks, and given that these 2 adjoining municipalities are economically and socially intertwined.
Yes, yeah, I think that works.
Yeah. At least it doesn't have that confrontation.
All right, Council, I think we've had good discussion. So unless there's any other changes people would like to propose, I'll give you a minute just to review it. Go ahead, Councillor Madigan.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to comment on any of the changes. I just want to add something, if I may, for the business community, as well as obviously our website, to give a positive message to the residents and the business community. I don't think that they're going to care whatever rationalization that they give us, because it's definitely in their eyes a very irrational decision. But that being said, I would like this message that we're sending to be put up on our website, obviously, which I know it's going to be, and then maybe sent to the BIA, the Chamber of Commerce, or Commerce, and any other business entity that we might have in the community. This is a very proactive approach. In some people's minds, it might be a little bit late, but at least we're taking a step tonight to figure out how we can best serve our community, our residents, and our businesses. So I thank everybody for their comments, and I look forward to this being a unanimous vote. But I just want to add that if we can get it out to the business community, they know where we are, so then they don't question. Please and thank you.
I think staff is taking note of that. Go ahead, Councillor McLeod.
Thank you. Piggybacking on what Councillor Madigan had to say, I think that we may want to send it to most of the municipalities within Simcoe, Muskoka as well.
Certainly Simcoe County, I would say, and other members of the Simcoe Muskoka Health Unit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please.
And Sarah will add that in there. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor Saunderson. So, and I'm assuming that this would involve a media release as well. And I'd also like to ask for a recorded vote.
Okay. I'll just CAO Skinner to answer the first question.
Yes, I just wanted to be clear. Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Jeffrey. Yes, I would see this including a media release, and one of the items in the motion includes kicking off a letter writing campaign from the public and businesses, which would necessitate a relatively broad communication within the community as well. Thank you.
All right, Council. It's been a good discussion. And seeing no further comments, I'm going to refer it to Clerk Thomas for the recorded vote, please.
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. A recorded vote has been requested. All those in the favor of the motion, please raise your yes cards.
Been a long day, Councillor McLeod. Good, you got it.
Motion carried, unanimous.
Thank you, everyone. And we do have one item on the consent agenda, so that takes us to item 5.1. And the resolution is that council hear and receive the general consent agenda, and further that the information and opinions provided in the general consent agenda items are of the authors and are not verified or approved as being correct. And we have one item, 5.1.1, which is the downtown BIA gray zone lockdown status. We've had a good discussion and we've been aware of that, but is there anyone that would like to pull that item for discussion? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just briefly, I'd like to just make 2 points. One, the Board of Directors for the BIA met this morning at a special meeting after a conversation over the weekend, and I think they've made a very clear and concise and direct statement in the document that was presented to us, as well as the motion that was provided this morning. And that leads me to my second, that's the one that I forwarded to everybody just for your review. And that leads me to my second point. And the second point is that Clerk Almus was in attendance of that meeting this morning and was the wordsmith behind that particular motion, as well as the majority of the one that you just, or I should say, we just passed tonight. So thank you to the BIA for being proactive in support of the business community. And of course, I think in the spirit, they were thinking not only of the BIA, but the general community as a whole. And thank you to the clerk for her efforts this morning and this evening. Thank you.
And I think I backed us into that without getting it on the floor. So if I can get a mover and a seconder for that, to get that on the floor. Councillor Jeffrey, Councillor Madigan, all in favor? All right. And so that brings us down to the last item, but just before we go, I want to thank all of council. Oh, we've got Councillor Berman back for a productive day. This announcement was made at 4:30 or 4:58 on Friday, and we've got a special council on Monday afternoon and a resolution to go. So thank you very much for being nimble and responsive. And so with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Jeffrey, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much, everyone.